Today I'm going to show you how to make 100% whole wheat bread in your bread machine. To make 100% whole wheat bread in our bread machine, we will need the following ingredients. 1 cup water, 1 teaspoon oil, 1/4 cup brown sugar, 1 teaspoon salt, 3 cups of whole wheat flour, and 2 1/4 teaspoons of bread machine yeast or 1 tablespoon of active dry yeast. So to put all of our ingredients together, I'm going to take the pan out of the machine. I prefer doing it out of the machine because then I don't have to worry about any of my ingredients falling down and getting dirty in there. So we're just going to pour in our ingredients. So there is my 1 cup water, my 1 teaspoon oil, my 1/4 cup of brown sugar, 1 teaspoon salt. I have 2 cups of whole wheat flour already measured out. And a tip when you're measuring your flour is you do need to be accurate with your measurements. So the easiest way to make sure you get the right amount is to take a whole cup and take a knife and literally just run it flat against your measuring cup and you get exactly 1 cup. For the yeast, I love using the bread machine yeast that's in a jar, especially if you're doing a lot of cooking. I just think it's so much more economical and easy to do. So we're just going to measure out 2 1/4 teaspoons. And my quarter measurement. Now we're ready to put the pan into the machine. To put our pan back into our bread machine, we're going to lift up the lid. And you'll notice that in here on the 2 sides I have these clips. And if you notice on the pan itself, I also have 2 clips. So when I'm putting it in, I'm going to make sure that those 2 clips are facing the spot in the bread machine to connect them. So I'm just going to put them down in, and then you want to push. You'll kind of hear and feel this audible click, and if I pull on this, you'll notice that it's nice and tight. It's not going to go anywhere. You want to make sure you put the holder down, the handle, so it doesn't get in the way, and then we're going to close the lid and we're going to go to our display. Now that I have the pan in my bread machine, we're going to go ahead and get it started. All bread machines will have at least these 2 settings, where you're going to have the type of bread that you want to make, and you're going to have the size. Now the recipe that we did was for a 1.5 pound loaf, and that's really, you do need to make sure of what capability your machine has. Mine goes up to 2 pounds. So I don't want to do like a 2.5 pound loaf because then it's going to overflow and damage my machine. So the first thing we're going to do is set what type of bread we want to do. Because we're doing whole wheat, we're going to set it on the number 2. So we're going to just hit my menu button till the 2 comes on. I can, on my machine, change the color of the bread. I'm going to select a medium. And then we're going to select the loaf size, which was the 1.5. Once we have everything set up, we're going to hit the start. You'll notice that my timer says 4 hours and 10 minutes. That's how long this process is going to take from start to finish of me putting the pan into the bread machine and hitting the start button. So the machine is going to mix it, knead it, let it rise, let it bake, warm it, and the whole entire thing is going to take 4 hours and 10 minutes. Now you'll notice when I turn the machine on, nothing happened. Don't panic. For whatever reason, the whole wheat cycle has like a half-hour waiting period. And I'm not really sure exactly why. I think it might have to do with like letting all of the ingredients soak together since we're using wheat bread. It's a little bit of a heavier bread. That's just my guess. I don't know for sure. All of the other cycles, when you turn them on, you'll actually hear the machine start spinning automatically, but you won't for the whole wheat. So don't panic, your machine is not broken. It just has like a half-hour waiting period before it does anything. So at this point, we're done. We just wait for our machine to beep at us to let us know that it's done, and we can enjoy our bread. So we'll check back on it when it's done. You'll notice after a few rotations the machine starts to speed up and it has that quicker whirling. You want to, once it looks like it's mixed most of the ingredients, we want to take a quick look at it to see the consistency of our dough. When you're looking at it, you can actually touch it, and if it feels kind of springy, then you're okay. If it feels like it's really dry, or if it's too sticky, then this is when we need to add a little bit of water or flour. If it's sticky, then we need to add a little bit more flour. When you're adding flour, you just want to do 1 tablespoon at a time. So if it felt sticky, put in 1 tablespoon, let it mix for a couple more minutes, and then check back on it again. If it still feels sticky, then you want to go ahead and add another tablespoon. But we want to do it a little bit at a time, just to make sure that we don't overflour it. If it felt too dry, like there's really no springiness to it, and it kind of like almost sticks to your, not sticks to your finger, but you have like flour on your finger, then it's not moist enough. So we need to add water. In which case, again, add 1 tablespoon of water. Let it go ahead and spin for a couple more minutes and mix it in and see how that looks. If it still feels like it's too powdery, then again, just add another tablespoon of water. But again, we want to do it a little bit at a time so that the dough has enough time to absorb either our flour or our water without becoming overly sticky or too watered down. Actually, this dough is looking pretty good. You can see that there really isn't a lot of extra ingredients all the way down at the bottom. Pretty much everything is staying in the center in my dough, and when I touch it, it actually feels pretty springy. So when I put my finger into it, it kind of leaves a little bit of a dent, but it's not sticky. I don't have any residue on my fingers. It's not powdery. I don't have any flour on my fingers either. So this to me actually looks pretty good. Now this is not a step that you want to skip. You do want to take a look at this, because if you don't catch it now, at the very end, your dough or your bread isn't going to be very good. So it's much more easier to catch it at the beginning. So to me this looks pretty good. So at this point I'm basically done. I'm going to go ahead and put the lid back on, and I'm going to wait until the machine beeps at me to tell me it's done. Once it finishes spinning, it's going to do that a little bit more. Then it's going to sit for a while so the dough can rise a bit. You don't want to keep opening up this lid. It's okay right now because it's still mixing, but once it actually starts baking and rising, we want to leave this on because we don't want to let heat escape. You'll notice that there is a clear window in most bread machines, so if you're curious as to what it looks like, you can take a peek in here, but try to refrain from opening up the lid needlessly. So right now we're done. We're going to wait until the bread machine beeps at me, and we're going to check back on it then. Once our bread is done, we're going to take it out of our bread machine, and you want to make sure you're doing this using gloves because this is going to be really hot. We're going to take a plastic knife, fork, spoon, whatever you want, and we're going to just rub it down the sides of the bread to just make sure it's separated from the pan. And you want to make sure you're doing this with a plastic utensil and not a metal one. If you do metal, you will end up scratching the Teflon coating on your pan. So next thing we're going to do is just pop this upside down. And actually my bread came out right away. If you notice your bread is still a little stuck, you can turn the bottom section here, that's where the knife is attached, and that will help loosen it so your bread pops out as well. We're going to let our bread cool for about 10-20 minutes until it is cool enough so that we can handle it and cut it. In the meantime, we're going to fill our pan up with water. You need to fill your pan up with water right away. If you don't, the dough, the yeast, all of that will cause it to get really hard and gritty, and it's going to be extremely hard to clean it and get that knife out. So I'm going to fill it with water, I'm going to let this cool, and then we'll come back. Once our whole wheat bread has finished cooking and it's finished cooling down, we're going to go ahead and cut it. I personally prefer to cut the slice in half, the entire loaf first in half. I find it's a little bit easier to manage. And then I'll go ahead and take it and put it on its side, and I'll cut it into slices this way. And there you go. We have 100% whole wheat bread.